See, what is that? That thing behind you, John, something that you did?
Yeah, that's my mosaic mask.
Mosaic mask.
Yeah,
That's nice.
I
Explain
did
what
that in
that
the
means.
mosaic class.
Explain what that means, mosaic. I don't
Mosaic,
know what's the
little
mask.
pieces of glass that you cut up to make the design. So those are all little pieces of glass attached actually to the back of a plate.
You must be a patient man to cut glasses and put it together. Yeah, look good.
Yeah, it was a fun class. That was at Benson.
Yeah, just for taking the time to do that, you deserve a credit.
Yes, and you got to make sure you don't cut your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important.
Hello,
Right.
boss.
How y'all doing?
Oh,
Hey,
well,
Good.
it's cold over there because I don't need my fan. It's hot in here. And I live in the basement.
Yeah, it's a little bit cool over here. Okay.
But I'm not here in Sandy Spring.
It's going to get warmer later.
Well, we hope so. It looks a little gray and kind of cloudy and cool.
Yes. When
Yeah,
is the
wind coming in, then the rain, and then the cold, then the heat.
Yeah.
Typical Georgia.
Yeah. So we're gonna take a little trip today. Very eclectic trip. We're gonna look at a lot of different stuff.
we're gonna travel to East Europe.
Well, actually, you're not far off, because actually we're going to look at a guy doing some plein air painting in a place called Montenegro. Anybody hear of that before?
Yeah, I know Montenegro is located. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for all those countries were fighting a few years ago, Bosnia, Herzegovina, all those, yeah.
Well, that was back in the 90s.
Yes, in the 90s, yes.
Yeah, when that was going on. Yeah, I think Bill Clinton was in office back then or something like that. He had something to do with it. Anyway, it is not that way today. Okay, and in fact, it's kind of a nice place.
Yeah, they have nice beaches, I heard.
Yes. Yep, and nice weather. Think of it this way. They look straight across at Italy, across the Adriatic Sea.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really right there in the Mediterranean, and it's interesting culture because I think when we were talking about Islamic art the other day, I don't know whether you guys noticed it or not, but that whole section in around Greece and like Central Europe at one point was part of the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with the influx of culture and people and things into that area, a lot of the food and stuff became, really what we call Mediterranean food now, which, has, Arab influences and, on the culture and, as well as Greek and, it's this mix of stuff. Anyway, but we're not going to talk about
Albania.
Pardon?
Is that Albania?
Well, Albania is just south of Montenegro on the coast. Yeah, Montenegro is a tiny country. It's actually smaller than the state of Connecticut.
Oh.
But it's really interesting. It's one of the more interesting countries in Europe because you have, really nice Mediterranean beaches, and you also have, skiing up in the mountains. And they also have the deepest canyon. I want to say that they have the deepest canyon on the planet, other than the one that's, the Marianas Trench. Now it's not as wide as the Grand Canyon, but it's supposedly deeper. But they have a lot of forest and a lot of unspoiled. In fact, it's the only remaining European hardwood forest that's basically been untouched. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful place. Anyway, we're going to watch this guy do a little plein air painting while he's there. And you'll get a sense of what the landscape is like. But, you know, that will tie it back into the art thing. But yeah, I've been looking at Montenegro lately. It's like, kind of want to go there. Yeah, check it out. See what it's up to.
Maybe retire there.
I don't know about that yet. You know, but you know, I mean, it is becoming, you know, one of those spots that people are looking at because cost of living there is very low. So anyway, let's look at the plein air thing here. But yeah, we're gonna look at this, and we're gonna talk a little bit about imagination and what part imagination plays, you know, in creating your art as well. So we're gonna kind of go there. All right, let me back this up. All right, and away we go. Everybody see, you know, Virtual Art Academy, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, this is Barry John Rabel from Montenegro, and I'm sharing with you some video I took of me working on a painting up in the hills behind Ratco's art residence where I've been staying for the last 3 months. I took it on my iPhone, so it's a bit rough and ready, but I hope you find something helpful in it. There's a beautiful valley scene here. I figured out how to capture this with the red, green, violets, and blues. Quite a challenge. So I started off by working on sketch to see if I could find something interesting in the design. And there seems to be some kind of diagonal ribbon here. So to give unity to the painting and organization structure.
Let's see if I can turn it up.
Mhm.
And we got to the color aspect. And the key thing is what to do with these reds, yellows, and violets. So I've been playing around with different sets of colors and trying to come up with a concept here. I'm thinking that blue, yellow is probably more important than the red. So, and if you use your finger, I think that's usually the best way to figure out the design. Some people color the yellow, because that would cover the red. Yellow hair does seem to be a bit of a problem. But without it, you don't have a light. So I decided to focus on the yellow-violet combination. And what I've done is I've laid in the sky with the various transitions. So some blues here, some pinks, which you can see in the distance. And then I'm putting in these mountain ranges and very light blues. And then gradually getting warmer with the violets. And I'm going to use these yellows and probably highlight those yellow greens at the foreground. We've also got some shadows here. If you look at the shadows on the road on the right here, that's an interesting violet. And I can probably use that in the design, give me some darks, because without the darks, the violets will also play up against the violets in the distance. So that's the design strategy. If you don't have a good design strategy, I find the things are generally bad. Yesterday I was trying to come up with a design on the second place of the village here. I wasn't there in the strategy. Straight back. So, look through the design before you get ready. Bye for now.
Okay, I want to stop it. I don't want to back up. Okay, to a couple of things. All right. Now, one, the way he's set up here, he's got a very kind of lightweight plein air setup, and I've seen these. You can actually buy pallets like this that fold out and will clip onto a tripod like this one, and that's what these are. They have a fitting that just sort of sits and locks onto this tripod to keep it in place. And what that does is that adds a little bit of weight to the tripod so it doesn't blow over. And the other thing is it keeps the whole thing fairly lightweight, so you're not carrying a lot of stuff with you, and you can be fairly efficient, when you go out and paint. The other part is, let's go back where he started the stills. Okay. So, he's working on a canvas panel here. It's not very large. It's probably, I would guess, 11 by 14, maybe 9 by 12. And, just kind of, we'll just kind of walk through what he's doing, step by step here. So, he's getting some basic colors down. He's got his colors for his sky and his initial kind of lay-in of the paint. And he's beginning to build up some of the color, in the middle ground and foreground. And as he goes along, let's see. It's past that, yeah. Okay. He's getting a little bit more paint down. So there we go. There's the first.
Plein air.
Yeah, plein air. And okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah. So you see, just putting some yellow down, beginning to put some of the purples down. And so, he's treating it like just, mass and areas of color. He's not trying to paint a particular thing. He's just getting, some of the basic colors down at first. And then, you see, he comes back and he'll layer the paint, make another passage on top of what he initially put down. And little by little, these blocks or these shapes begin to fill in. Yeah. And again, nowhere along here is he painting a tree or is he painting a mountain or, any particular thing, but, as he begins to get, more of this color down and build up the layers of paint, things begin to take on, some actual shapes and forms and become, a little more recognizable. And you see, just little by little, it's like this thing just sort of emerges, out of the color that he's using. Until he's really kind of at the final, piece. Which, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, that's the end result. And, he's got a good sense of the distance in the background. You can tell what things are. He hasn't spent any real amount of time, trying to paint anything specifically. You know, it's a suggestion that there are trees and buildings and, you know, the hillside and the mountains in the distance. And, you know, when we get out and paint here in, what, 2 weeks, you know, that's going to be important to keep in mind, because that's exactly what you want to do. You want to keep it general, you know, and not necessarily real specific, so that, you know, as you develop the painting, you can make, you know, your choices about, you know, where you want to focus. So,
So he's when he's painting over the background is still wet. Those big large areas, they're still basically wet.
right. Yeah, but you know, the first passages that he put down were really pretty thin paint.
Yeah, it looked like it, right?
Yeah. See, that goes with that, you know, idea of going from lean paint to fat paint, right? And you don't have to worry about it if you're doing watercolor, because,
Right.
you know, even in watercolor, it sort of works that way. You know, when you put down your initial washes, it's mainly water with just a little bit of color to tint, right? And then as you begin to put in more layers, you know, it's less water, more paint, right?
Right.
Until really at the very end, and then you're, you know, pretty much so using paint that's pretty thick for watercolor,
Right.
and highly saturated with pigment, you know, and that's the last part that you put in, you know, because if you did it otherwise, all that's going to happen is that those lighter washes are just going to dissolve, you know, your more intense color. And so you've kind of got to work that way, and build it up slowly. You know, and the same is true with oil. You know, you've got a lot of terp, you know, in your paint at first, you know, and then by the time that you're, you know, toward the end of the painting, you're either putting it on almost straight, you know, off of the palette with no medium in it, and or you're using a palette knife to lay it in, you know, and really put in those kind of thicker, more direct, you know, passages at the end. So now we're going to be using acrylic if you end up using the paint that I bring. And the thing you'll find about acrylic is it works kind of the same way as oil. You're going to start thin. So your colors are going to have possibly a lot of, you know, for the block in, I usually use water to thin the paint. And, you know, I'll just kind of lay it down real quick. You know, and then after that, you know, as I begin to move into sort of like my midtones, things like that, you know, then I'll use less water, or I'll switch and I'll use painting medium, you know, to mix the paint with, so that it stays a little bit thicker and the viscosity is a little bit stronger. And it's real easy to lay that over those initial sort of washy passages of color. And then in the end, you know, I'm pretty much so using just the straight acrylic paint by itself. And if I really want to build up a lot of texture and have, you know, a very painterly feel to it, you know, then I'll use like a heavy gel medium mixed, you know, as the medium into the color. And that way it holds its shape as I put it down. And I won't blend any of that out. You know, I'll just kind of lay it on there, and, you know, that'll be it. But, you know, acrylic is, it's not a bad medium to use, you know, particularly for plein air painting, because it does dry so quickly that you can layer the paint and you don't have to worry about, you know, getting the color muddy like you do with oil paint, because you're not putting wet paint over wet paint. You've got a fairly intact surface, and so you can lay things on there pretty easily. Anybody got any questions kind of about that process? No? Okay. All right. So we're gonna look at this guy. He's talking about creating compositions. Out. Is that the one? Let's see. Huh. Come on. All right. Anyway, yeah, he's basically talking about composition on this and how to kind of create compositions while you're out actually painting. So it's all kind of on the fly. All right, so let's move him out of the way so I can get to the share thing. There we go. All right. And actually hit share, that would help. Okay. And everybody see this guy looking at you?
I've been gone for a month now teaching this.
Back it up a little bit. There we go.
Hi, Ian Roberts, and welcome to Composition. So I've been gone for a month now teaching this course, Mastering Composition. It's been going great. The students have been having a good experience, I think, such as they tell me. And I just wanted to talk this week about the role that shadows play, that darks play in creating drama in your image. That they can really manufacture the drama for a good painting. Because today, everything is so well lit. You think of a mall, let's say, or so many people's houses with big windows. Everything is really well lit. And if you're setting up a still life or an interior, you're doing an interior and it's all well lit, the problem is when it's full of light, it kills the form. The more light sources you have around something, the more you lose the sense of form. The more you have a single light source, the more you start to crack a sense of form. So there's a really interesting book called In Praise of Shadows by a Japanese author named Hanazaki. And he talks about how the Japanese like dark, sort of shadowy places. And they don't like things to be well lit. And I'm not sure this is true or not, but the point is there is a beauty to the sort of the dark and the shadow things that allow the light to come through, the thing you're actually looking at. So you can see in many of the great paintings in history, in the 19th century, early 20th century, there's often just a single light source, and it just forms such a terrific sense of the object bathed in light with a strong sense of form. So those beautiful darks in behind it, and then these rich highlights craft this sense of form. Well, the point was there was no electricity. There was just north-facing windows, because the north-facing window, the light stayed the same all day. And just look at these two Vermeers, for example. Single window, and look at how that single light source crafts the form. And then these two portraits by Anders Zorn. North light, single source, creates a lot of drama, all the background just sort of filling into darks, not much information, and how the light hits the thing he wants us to look at. And Andrew Wyeth, he often does the same thing. A single, stark light source, and look at the way as the light rakes across that barrel, how it brings out a sense of form and structure. So I was attracted to this image. It's a photo I took in Provence years ago on market day, and it was a really crowded day, and yet for some reason this woman was just sitting alone in a cafe, just surrounded by the dark, and I loved the quality of it. And I did the painting a couple of years, several years ago now, really. And I cut her out. I don't know why exactly. I just was thinking it would be more interesting without her. But I was drawn to do it again, and I wanted to include it this time. So here's the process that I went through as I painted this. And you'll notice right from the start, I'm painting in the darks and how it has this fundamental role of kind of carving in the background. So even before I start to paint it, the lit things start to come together. The darks play a really important role in the whole image. So I hope you know that. That's good.
So we want to build up the darks. I just got some, well, it's pretty much just acrid black, with a touch of white. And you can see I just sort of take all the darks. It's a pretty small brush for what I'm doing actually, but I just take all the darks, carve it around the head, and just bring that whole shape forward rather than trying to carve the light, because the canvas, the moment I get the dark in, the value of the canvas, and this is 13 by 18, this canvas, just raw canvas, gessoed 3 times and stapled to a board. But you can see the moment I put the darks in, it starts to define the whole painting. Right? And then down here in the bottom, I get it a little bit lighter because there's light bouncing concrete down. But this is the whole thing with the darks. You put the darks in, and then a good deal of the painting is kind of already taking care of itself. Now here's this first, well, the second, but the first sunlit piece, and you see how dark that sunlit piece of cable is. There's the second one back there. I'm still using a pretty big brush just to kind of get these shapes in there. But then you can see I put in the shadow side, which is kind of a dark purple color to kind of give that. You can just see the relationship between those two. And then the chairs, obviously, very bright red, but they are a long, long way from pure pigment. There's a lot of other color in there. And then the light hitting, sort of half hitting that chair back there, just sort of gives us the sense that the light's bouncing back into it. We can sort of see it, but it's not too, not catching too much attention in the first one. Me in the darks, in the shadow side of her dress. But there's lots of shadows going on that are going to start to there's her forearm, just a mark for that, a little bit of hair. But you'll see that a lot of the dark side of things, there's just a bit of color for her face. And here's you can see it's pretty much the same value, right? A little slightly different color, but same value pretty much as the toned canvas. So by putting in all the darks, just leaving the toned canvas already tells you a lot. But a lot of the objects, like the woman, for example, the back side of her will just disappear back into the shadows. But you can just see it's going simply shape by shape. Now we're getting into these chairs, and I have to sort of make sure that the one thing about the chairs is you've got to make sure the perspective is right. It's really wonky, amazingly quick. So there's a little bit more light hitting that arm compared to at the back. So just sort of bringing around a line or two of color, just to kind of give it that, but not nearly as intense as on the lit chairs. And then here are the shadow reds and blues for the back of her sweater. And you see they just sort of disappear into the black behind it, so that that edge starts to disappear. And then here's just a couple of little spots of light, just indicate, oh, there must be some lights going on. You see, we're just sort of a little flick here and there, and they give us the sense of something going on in the background. Now, this is pretty pure pigment. This is cad red and some orange, just to catch the lit side of her sweater. And then I'll put the blues in. But you can just see that there's a few spots there that are really catching the light. And then this is, as the form turns around, that shadow that becomes, that red becomes darker. And then I put in the lit side. There's quite a lot of different things going on in that sweater. But I just sort of have a lit side to the blue and lit side to the red, and then all the others sort of move into shadow. But I still want to keep color back in those shadow areas. I don't want them just to go completely out. So you'll see that I'll spend some time sort of crafting the form of how things are turning in space that way, so that getting some of those shadow shapes and those folds in the cloth. And we work on that. And then there's a little dark line underneath the newspaper, a highlight there, just catching the light. like a little bit more work on the face. I don't want to sort of, oh, and also the head is too big, so I just have to kind of cut it here and there. But I don't want to overwork anything. I don't want to spend a lot of time hands or the face or anything. There, you're just sort of getting that line of orange for the sunlit chairs. And again, you've got to make sure that you get them so the perspectives right, because they look like really warped and weird. You have to move way over here in order to do it kind of right. There you can just see, I mean, I've got the perspective organized in my head. I got the drawing before I start. So I'm just making sure that that's working. And then that table comes out in front of the chair so that we can get its placement in space. And then the changes I made through that mesh were too strong, so I had to soften them. And then there's a few places where we've got shadows just of the table legs. And then with a couple of more little pieces, we're all finished. And then there's the finished painting. And you can see how much of the work is being done, the drama of the painting, obviously, by the shadows. So the front section is getting the light, the whole thing is being illuminated by this big dark behind. And that's why so many of those paintings from the 19th century and early 20th century have such beautiful drama to them, because they're using this single light source with lots of darks to make the light really come alive.
So I hope you found that was helpful. Please do subscribe, and please do sign up on my email list so that you can receive these YouTube right to your inbox once a month. The next video will be the first Tuesday of April. I hope you have a fantastic month. Please do leave a comment, and I will see you in April. Bye.
Okay. Armando's gets back to me. So, any thoughts about any of that?
Nah.
Nah.
Yes, interesting. You never thought of that, like you said, the old masters, the drama of the paintings is the one source lighting and the dark shadows. So it was good.
Yeah, contrast. You know, it's all about the contrast. And when you're out painting, one of the first things you want to look for is you want to look for in whatever you're viewing, where's the highest degree of contrast in light and dark, because that's going to make the most interesting painting. Okay, if everything is, you know, like totally lit up, you know, kind of equally, well, you know, there's not a lot of contrast there. It's not going to make a very interesting painting. You know, it might be something that's colorful, but you're going to lose some of that sense of depth and form. And so, you know, when you're out scouting around, you know, looking for something to paint, you know, look for something with shadows, you know, and something with light, you know, and how they play against each other. And particularly if you can get one, you know, kind of situated right up against the other, okay? Because that will always make a really good painting, because the more contrast you have, you know, the more interesting the painting is going to be. Okay. So let's see. So that would be a good one.
So Charles, he drew everything in.
Mhm.
That was number one. And
Yeah,
did he use like a raw umber with his paintbrush, or what did he use to draw everything?
Well, I think he used probably just a graphite pencil,
Okay.
you know, just to sketch it out. Now, how do I feel about that? You can. I mean, there are times, you know, when you're going to want to draw it out. Now, usually when I look for, you know, solving perspective problems, shapes, things like that, rather than using a pencil, I'll just use paint. And so, I might use a raw umber. I might use, like a, like an alizarin crimson or some kind of dark red, or brownish red sort of tone, or mixture, to sketch everything out, on my canvas. And that way, I have a composition sort of established, and I know where the sky and the tree lines and the mass of land, and if there's architecture or building, there, I know where all that is, and about the size and the general shape of it. The thing you want to avoid is you want to avoid putting too much time and effort into getting a lot of detail, in that initial sketch, because you're gonna bury it all. You're gonna lose it. It's really just a guide.
Okay.
So it's perfectly okay, to put in some shapes and things, begin to figure out where they are before you ever start putting any real color down there. And in a lot of cases, particularly when you're dealing with perspective and architecture and stuff like that, it's advisable, to get that stuff in there and make sure that your perspective is correct, before you start laying in color, because once you start getting paint on there, it's hard to go back.
Yeah.
So not impossible, but more difficult, to say the least. Okay. Anybody else got a question about that? No. You guys are going to go out there and just tear that plein air stuff up, aren't you?
I don't know about that, but okay.
Okay. All right. Well. All right. So I've got 2 more short videos for you, and then we're going to get into this discussion about, how important is your imagination and being creative while you're out there painting, or even in your studio painting. And it's can everybody see the Watts Atelier of Arts?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, because that's the one we want. Yeah. If we don't have that up, then we're in trouble.
Hey everybody, welcome to Watts Weekly. This is going to be a little bit of a tour through my history at Watts Atelier with my padded drawings here. So I've got this big box in front of me, and this is full of about 400 drawings. We probably won't go through all of them today. In fact, this will probably be a multi-part Watts Weekly. But what I wanted to go over is just kind of talk about my drawings and show you a selection of drawings that in the 25 plus years that I've been here. I've got about 8 boxes like this, and those are just the drawings that I've kept. So that tells you the kind of mileage that I've put into drawing and teaching and just trying to improve myself as an artist, technically. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this. So this first drawing here, this is a page of bodybuilder legs, female bodybuilder legs. This was a demonstration from, I can't remember if it was an online demo or an actual anatomy class, but one or the other. So this is from Bridgman. So what I used to do, and what I still do, is I will go through a bunch of like fitness magazines and websites and things like that, finding a reference that looks sort of like Bridgman's drawings. Now we've actually gone and photographed one of our models in all of the same poses as the Bridgman pose, so we can get it exact. But this is before we were doing that. So these are just sort of random pictures that I found in bodybuilder magazines, fitness magazines, and websites, fitness websites. So that's what this is. This was a really amazing drawing for me. It was when I really felt like I was hitting my stride and plateauing at my drawing level. You know, it still goes up and down for the most part, but this is when I really felt like I had a good handle on drawing. It's good control of values, nice planar work. I kind of started to feel like I was coming into a style of my own. It certainly is reminiscent of Jeff's, but you know, I could start telling the difference. It didn't just look like a lesser version of Jeff's drawing, but they kind of looked a little bit more like mine. So I was really proud of this page of legs when I did it because, like I said, it felt like it was more my own. It was a demo and it came out pretty good. So just all around, I was pretty happy with that, and that's why this is in here. So just anatomy studies from photographs. This is a head drawing demo from probably about, I had to guess, about 15 years ago. This is when I really started pushing the idea of the two value, emphasizing the two value block in my demos, and getting away from just really designerly mapping and getting students to focus on just what's lit and what's unlit. So there's a big emphasis on that. I mean, obviously it ended up more than two values, but this was early on when I switched over to that mentality. It really helped me as an artist to think of that big two value design in the drawings. And it worked out well. It's got a good likeness. It's solid. You know, there's nothing flashy, but it's easy to understand and easy to make sense of. Which, as a teacher in a demo, I think is very, very important. No matter how good your drawing is in the demo, if it's confusing the students, it's not a good demo. So it needs to not only be nice looking and solid, but also needs to make sense very, very quickly and make the students feel like it's something that they can do and they can wrap their brain. Here's just a fun page of 5-minute heads. Same model, actually. I don't think it's from the same day, but it may have been. I've drawn Van thousands of times, so it would be difficult for me to say, you know, when exactly this was done. But it's a nice abstract page of 5-minute heads. Again, this was an interesting phase in my drawing where I wasn't as reliant on construction. I would say the construction is one of the main attributes and main characteristics of my drawing approach, but I wanted to also get away from that and focus a little bit more on just really clear design. So you can see the heads aren't even really laid in. It's just shape, 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 which I think is a good exercise. And it's one of the things I like to do in quick sketches of any kind, quick drawings, is explore things a little bit and emphasize and isolate certain skills. So if I'm doing 5-minute drawings, I might focus just on design. I might focus just on construction. I might focus just on form. You know, whatever it might be, I'll pick one specific thing to really lean on. And the more you lean on one specific attribute of drawing, one specific characteristic of drawing, it really forces you to address that and see where you stand with it. Whereas if maybe your construction isn't so good, if your design and observation is strong, then you can kind of mask the fact that your construction isn't all that great. But if you do just construction drawings, it starts becoming really clear that you know what you're doing.
Why interpreters want this instant translator device banned in the US? This real-time translator device is taking the world.
Especially in 5 minutes. This is what I called my clean phase. I really like this demo a lot, actually. It was a 25-minute demo. One of the first demos that I did where I thought it was just straight up a good drawing. Not a good drawing for 25 minutes, but just a good drawing. It's got dual lighting. But this is definitely my clean phase, where I was going much more direct with my shading, not quite so designerly or textural, not a lot of cross-hatching like you might see in a lot of my drawings. And again, I like that cross-hatching. It's a look that I strive for and I prefer. But this is when I was getting away from that. Again, you don't want to like anything as a gimmick too much. So sometimes taking something, even if you love doing it, removing that from your process to see how you do without it, handicapping yourself a little bit, can be a good move. It can be uncomfortable, but it can really generate some good growth. So then when you go back to or reincorporate that thing that you really enjoy, your drawings are much stronger underneath that. So this is one of our models, Tori. Tori's great. I haven't had Tori model in a while, and I miss her, but she's a great model. So. This is another one of our long-term models, Stephanie. Stephanie's still around and modeling for us, and she's great. This, again, is kind of more of that style that I'm a little bit more known for. Heavy outlines, heavy design, lots of very clear pencil strokes and cross hatching in it. Not really much to say about this drawing other than I like it. It's in here because I like it. It's really spontaneous. And this is more that range that I like to draw in. This isn't me really handicapping myself at all. This is me just going at it. But it's another 25-minute demo. And it's a look that I really like. It's probably my favorite look in my drawings. So that's what I really enjoy. Is this is sort of my wheelhouse. This is the kind of drawing that I like doing. It's just sort of me showing off more than anything, which I don't really like to do that too much in demos, but it can be good as well because it serves as more inspiration. So this is more at the end of the drawing where I'm just showing people how I do what I do. There probably wasn't a lot of verbalization in this demo. It was just more of a pure visual demonstration, which, like I said, can be good. It's inspirational. It's fun. I remember seeing a lot of Jeff's drawings that, 30 years later, I can still remember watching them. I don't really remember much of what he said in some of them, but the visuals stuck with me. And then there's other demos that he said things that really changed the way I looked at art. So it just kind of depends. Some demos are more verbal instructional and they're nice, clean drawings, but nothing you're gonna, show off to anyone. And other demos they're a lot about showing off. It's a visual medium, and so you need to be able to demonstrate on a purely visual level as well. So here's more of those Bridgman bodybuilder studies. So again, taking some bodybuilder arms that are close to what Bridgman was drawing from his books. And I like to go back and forth. I'll do drawings from Bridgman, and then I'll do drawings from bodybuilders that are similar, or fitness models that are similar. Bodybuilders sometimes can be a little bit too much. So going back and forth and eventually blurring that line where it might be difficult to tell which is which. You're stealing from some of Bridgman to enhance the bodybuilder drawings. You're stealing from the bodybuilder drawings to enhance the Bridgman drawings. It's a really interesting way to study that. I'm pretty sure Jeff developed it. And it's some of my first drawings that I ever got on the brochure here at the school were actually drawings that I did from the Bridgman drawing. So obviously there's something there that stuck with me, and I continue to do it to this day. Again, here's another drawing that's kind of more in that wheelhouse, that look that I'm known for a little bit more, where lots of directional shading, a little bit looser, really punchy in the values, bordering on chaotic, but still making it work. So again, I like this drawing a lot for that reason, that it's really in that wheelhouse of exactly what I'm going for in my drawings, where it's walking that razor's edge between harmony and diversity. It's pushing into that chaos a little bit more, but still managing to control it. And that's how Jeff refers to it often, as controlled chaos. And I like that. I like that term a lot. I like that phrase a lot because it really sums up what I like to see in my drawings. If it's too clean, it kind of bores me. If it's too chaotic, it falls apart. So always trying to walk that boundary. And sometimes I'll do a demo again where I want to demonstrate that to students, that what we call the look. There's no real word for it other than a look. And so what's the look? It's like, there's no other words for it, but you'll know it when you see it. It's a purely visual thing. Now here's one that's really heavy on that chaos. This was a 25-minute demo. This was one of the first figure drawing demos where I really managed to push into a full value range and get something that was really punchy. Up until this point, I'd been kind of timid with my demos because I was afraid to make a mistake. I was afraid to screw up. And at a certain point, I just burnt out of that. And I wanted to push a little bit further and thought, well, if I'm going to keep teaching, I need to push beyond just this really fundamental phase occasionally. And like I said, show off a little bit, be a little bit more inspirational and not so academic. I think there's a place for both. And back then, there were 10-week sessions. And you could kind of build from very, very academic at the beginning of the semester, eventually pushing it towards the end of the semester and showing people a little bit more of a finish, or looking for just a purely aesthetic approach to drawing, not worrying about the fundamentals as much. Now with the 5-week sessions, that's a little bit more truncated. It's more difficult to do. But I still do it. I try to build from very simple at the beginning of the semester, going over the fundamentals, gesture, structure, maths, and eventually at the end of the 5 weeks, finishing off with some really punchy drawings. Here's another one from that phase that I was talking about, where it's relying more on design and observation, and not so much on traditional construction. just seeing how intuitive it is. And I was really proud of this page. In fact, there's even some decent likenesses in it. This is Morgan Black, another one of our long-term models who I haven't seen in a while, but hopefully we'll get it back in. And there's a longer drawing of Morgan. Again, I don't know if those are from the same day or not, but that's a demo from Morgan again. This one's kind of in that middle range. It's certainly got some punchier drawing and some interesting charisma to it. But it's also very solid, very well structured. You can even see some of the structure lines still showing through. So again, demos can run the gamut. You know, it all kind of depends on, sometimes it's just reading the classroom and reading the students that are in there and teaching to their ability level. And sometimes it's just setting a curriculum and sticking to it, starting very simple at the beginning and building towards complex at the end. Here's some really fun drawings. I think these were probably like 10s or something like that. When I would teach the 20-minute figure lands class, sometimes people don't need too much help at the beginning of sitting. They need to mess some stuff up before you can come over and help them. So what I would do is, in the first 10 minutes I was sitting, I'd sit down and do one of my own drawings, and then in the second 10 minutes, second half of the sitting, I would walk around and help students. And so this would be like the first 5-10 minutes of a 20-minute session over the course of the class. Usually get 4 or 5 sittings, and so this was probably 4 sittings where I would sit there and just kind of draw for myself and wait for someone to need help. I do some 5-minute quick sketches. I don't know why there's only 3 of them. Maybe I had to go to the restroom towards the end of the sitting or something else. But yeah, these are really nice. They got a nice energy, nice gesture. It's one of the big things you're always looking for in quick sketches is a nice gesture and nice movement. But they're still solid and tonal as well. So I don't have too much to say about these other than it's just a page that I like the look of, and it was a more tonal style. But I wanted to get some of those set aside as well. So more from that era. It was a quick sketch era that I really liked a lot. Sometimes I move around and do weird little skull heads and such. Don't forget to have fun. It's something that I'm always really trying to remember to do in my own work, is that don't let it become drudgery. You know, sometimes doing bad drawings isn't the most fun thing in the world, but you need to remember that the reason you got into drawing and painting in the first place is because it's fun. So keep it fun. Have a good time with your drawing. Goof around a little bit. Don't take it too seriously. Don't slack off and be a goofball either. But it's supposed to be fun. This is probably from that same phase as well, where I was starting to get a little bit gutsy. Underneath, there's still a nice clean drawing, but going in a few places and pushing some darker values right towards the end of the demo. It's starting to experiment with some stronger design, losing some edges, having some fun with contour. Just a really nice drawing. This was Pam. Pam was one of our top models for a long time. In fact, she booked models for us for years and years and years. She's since sadly passed away, but she was a wonderful lady and an excellent model. I want to blank on this model. Was it Silk? I can't remember this model's name right off the top of my head, but he was a good model as well. Really interesting, really fit. One of those triple threat models. It was great quick sketch, great head model, great figure. This is again during that aggressive phase where I was really trying to push myself to break through. Like I said, I'd been to school probably about 5 years at that point, 5-6 years, and I was really starting to get aggressive in the drawing and pushing myself and trying to stomp out that fear and timidity that I found in my drawings. And again, I flubbed a lot of drawings during that phase, but I had to do it to break through. And sometimes you have to do that as an artist, is just really start to break through and not be afraid of screwing things up. So again, here's another one of those drawings from that phase. Really nice and clean, nothing wrong with it at all, but not, at the same time, not the most exciting thing in the world. Nice and simple, good proportions, good gesture, good two-value design, but nothing too flashy in it by any means. So certainly nothing too gutsy. Just really walking the students through the process and trying to provide a good example for them. Here's again a simpler phase of quick sketch that I was going through. This is when I was looking a lot at Glenn Orbick stuff. Phenomenal draftsman, one of Jeff's main teachers. And he had a really rhythmical, simple style of quick sketch that was super, super beautiful. And I'm still enamored with him. And this was a phase I was going through where I was really pushing that look. I can't remember how long ago that was exactly, but probably 12, 13 years ago, something like that. So I was just kind of constantly looking for new things to try and help me push my drawings to that next level, because you're not always sure what that is. Sometimes you just have to go down a side street, similar to evolution. You know, sometimes you go down a side street and it dead ends and doesn't go anywhere. So it's kind of the same way. And basically it is evolution. You're evolving as an artist. And so sometimes you send off down a path and try some stuff and it doesn't work out. And then you branch off another path and it does. And slowly over the course of, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, your drawings evolve into what you want. It's not natural selection, it's artistic selection on your part. But it's still the same basic idea. This was a really nice phase that I was going through. Again, probably that around that same time. So some of these are kind of in groups, I'm noticing a little bit. So again, lots of really flowing linear lines, reminiscent of Glenn Orbick stuff. So this is definitely that phase. He always composed his 5-minute heads really nicely on the page as well. So I'm sure that this was during that phase that I was looking at his work and studying it a lot. And I still go back and do that from time to time. But yeah, that was definitely during that phase. A really simple but beautiful. When I say simple, I don't mean simple in simple to do. It's simple in trying to remove as many things from the process as you can and just really boil it down to what you want to do in your drawings. So again, here's another one of those drawings that is a little bit more what I'm known for, what people see a lot of in my work. And that's that really kind of aggressive, directional shading look to the drawings that I'm definitely fond of, and I would call it sort of my base camp. It's what I'm always going back to when I feel like I need to regroup. It's the way of drawing that I'm most comfortable with.
Okay. All right. What'd you guys get out of that? Hello?
That it's a process, that's of evolution.
Yeah. If you don't get anything else out of that, it's it's all about persistence, keeping at it, keep drawing. That's really the key important thing. Painting, sculpting, all those things are helpful, but the drawing is key, because if you don't keep drawing, that skill gets rusty pretty quickly. And so, it's something that you use, while you're painting, but, developing the drawing skills will really help your painting skills, tremendously. If you don't have that, not so much. So definitely keep drawing. And, even if you only do it like, 5-10 minutes a day, if it's drawing or doing a little sketch of a coffee cup or just something that you see, it doesn't have to be this long, elaborate, drawn out, hours and hours of study and process. It's just keeping your hand in to looking at light and darks, proportions, movement, stuff like that. Really helps keep your brain sharp. And then when you get to the painting phase, it comes out, at the end of the paintbrush as well. So without it, it doesn't. So, that's why, drawing is such an important skill. One of the other things I want you guys to get out of it too is, when you're doing those quicker drawings, you know, it's like you don't have to do a, you know, like a drawing per page, right? And particularly, you know, with those like 5-10 minute drawings, things like that, you know, you want to be accurate, you know, in the process of doing the drawing itself as much as you can. But at the same time, you also want to keep in mind that you're going to put several drawings on that page and make it sort of a design exercise. You know, how are you going to fit those together in sort of an interesting way? And if you work at that for a while, you know, you'll find that you'll become inherently a better designer, you know, in creating, you know, your own artwork. Because you know, that's another one of those little hidden skills that you can improve, you know, just through the phase of drawing. You know, it's like, how do you arrange things on the page? You know, when you've got multiple figures, you know, how, you know, sometimes you'll push a figure back or pull a figure forward, for example, so they overlap. Or maybe you'll have 3 figures on the page, but you'll have one dominant figure and then 2 smaller figures, and where you place them. And again, you know, it's one of those skills that are important that don't get talked about a lot, but you know, it really does change, you know, everything if you practice it on a regular basis. You know, you become a much better designer and can kind of see possibilities. And so that's going to kind of break us into the conversation that I want to have today. And it's about imagination and how important is imagination in the process of creating your art. And, you know, I know for myself, one of the things that inspired me, you know, to be an artist in the first place is, you know, I didn't start off doing life drawings. You know, I started off actually doing drawings of things that, you know, didn't exist, you know, anymore, at least. You know, things like dinosaurs and, you know, historical figures, things like that. And so you had to use your imagination.
Witches.
What was that, Armando?
Maybe you were drawing witches too.
Witches? No, I didn't really draw too many witches. You know, that was not my thing. But witches are fine. You know, and in fact, there's a lot of people out there who do witches and things like that. And you know, I've since the time that I've kind of gotten into art as a young person, you know, I went through several different phases, and I did some what you would call fantasy or sci-fi art. And in fact, you know, I had a couple of publishing clients, and that was the genre that, you know, they published. And so I got to do a couple of covers for, you know, like sci-fi and fantasy type, you know, book illustrations. And that was always really fun to me, you know, because it's, you know, it's like, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go see that? You know, and the fact is, nowhere. You've got to make it up. You know, you read the story, and then the story kind of brings up imagery for you, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that all of you become sci-fi and fantasy illustrators or artists, you know, but, you know, what I am suggesting is that, you know, you can, you know, as an artist, use your imagination, okay? You don't have to necessarily draw and paint things just as you see them, right? This is not necessarily an academic exercise of I'm painting an egg or a coffee cup or something like that, and I've got to make it look exactly like it. And sometimes, and Armando, this kind of applies to you, is like in the drawings that you did the other day, right? And particularly the drawing of Maddie. Okay. Was it a portrait of her? No. Okay. but you exaggerated things. You know, you pushed things, you played with them. And it really became more of a, you know, kind of a design than it was really a portrait, you know, of her. But it was an interesting drawing. And, you know, one of the things that we don't allow ourselves enough time doing is just playing, you know, playing with ideas, you know, pushing things. You know, even if you get to the point where you can draw accurately and you can do representational, like portraits and things like that, sometimes it's fun, you know, just to try to push it, you know, go a little beyond that, exaggerate things. And there's a lot that you can learn in the process of doing that. So, has anybody ever heard of an art form called, you know, imaginative realism? No. Okay. Well, we've looked at a couple of different artists who did such things. You know, recently we looked at a guy by the name of James Gurney, right? He was the one who did the book Dinotopia. Okay. Where do you think he came up with all those dinosaurs? I mean, how do you paint something that lived, you know, 65, 70 million years ago that don't exist anymore?
Well,
From his creative imagination, probably with some references.
mhm.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a process. We got somebody talking in the background. It's kind of a process of, okay, so
I got to go.
you got to go? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Bye, Elon.
Right.
It's kind of a process of, all right, you have this idea of what this might look like, right? And then after that, then you've got to begin to figure out, and particularly we'll just talk about the case of, you know, painting a dinosaur, kind of what the anatomy is, and not so much about all the bones and muscles and everything else, but, you know, what the big masses and shapes and how they move and stuff like that. And so you start doing thumbnail sketches. And then from the thumbnail sketches, you build that up into, you know, more, say, representational finished drawings, right? And then from the finished drawings, then you begin to put together a more cohesive composition. And at that point, you know, then you might do some value studies to kind of figure out lighting. And then after that, you would go into a painting. And so, you know, it wasn't just a, you know, I'm going to draw a dinosaur, you know, and 10 minutes later, you know, you've got something with a long neck and a long tail. You know, there was a process that he went through, you know, to develop those images and make them convincing, you know. And so, you know, the same thing can be done with your art. You know, you can push yourself. And just because, you know, you're painting, let's say that you're painting somebody like Armando wants to paint one of the ladies on his couch. You know, does he have to paint her photographically? No. You know, you've got choices. You know, you've got, you know, all the way over here from Pablo Picasso, right, with Les Demoiselles, and you could make her very sort of abstract, right? You know, all the way to somebody like Bouguereau, who did these very soft, sort of, you know, angelic figures. And you could go anywhere in between, you know, or you could go a totally different direction. You know, it's all up to you. So, you know, one of the important things I think about in creating art is trying to figure out who you are as an artist and, you know, what it is that you want to say and how you want to express it. And one of the things out of the last video that you might get is it is a process. And you might try something and it may not work out the first time, right? But you learn a little something from it. And maybe you kind of hold on to that, you know, in the back of your head. And then as you continue to develop, you know, maybe you try it again, you know, on a different piece of art. And maybe you try to figure out a better way of doing it. And little by little, you know, you'll develop it into something that is personal, you know, something that's yours, something that when people look at your work, they can identify that. And, you know, and that's kind of what we're all looking for, is sort of that signature, you know, that it's, you know, it's you doing it, and it's not that you're just trying to copy, you know, what it is that you see. Okay. Anybody got any thoughts about that? Yes, no?
So you are suggesting us that we should paint out of our imagination.
Well, what I am challenging you to do is you can, you know, you can paint the things that are around you. You can paint how you feel, or, you know, how you see things in the world, you know, to express yourself. And they don't all have to be, you know, pretty and rendered and, you know, anatomically accurate, you know. You know, if you haven't learned anything else over the last year and a half, is, you know, you've got kind of a wide range. You're free to do, you know, really whatever you want to do. Think of Edvard Munch, right? And the painting The Scream. Everybody kind of familiar with that painting?
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything realistic about that?
Not really.
No. But you understood, you know, you understood what it was about, right? You know, because of the expression. You knew that, you know, this was a person, a human being, right? And that they were kind of expressing, you know, their shock or their horror.
What's the name of the painting? What's the name of the painting?
The Scream.
Scream, okay.
Yeah.
I think that particular one you can almost associate with possibly like from nightmares and things like that. It wasn't too abstract or too away from life, really. It's still, it's something I don't know, you can sort of relate to, and I think the image, even though it's not an accurate image, it just evokes things in your mind of, yeah, screaming.
Is the one by Edvard Munch?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, found it.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, that one. Okay. So, you know, what he was talking about was he was talking about how the world was changing. You know, people's lives, and remember when this was, okay? This was back in like the late 1800s, maybe the early 1900s. And today we look at that period of time as being somewhat halcyon and, you know, slow moving, you know, very kind of relaxed pace, right? That's not how they saw it. You know, they saw it as, you know, everything had sped up and they were under all of this psychological pressure, you know, because the pace of life was moving, you know, much faster than it had moved for, you know, their parents or, you know, their grandparents. And they were looking back at that time, you know, and saying, wow, you know, the good old days when, you know, grandma and grandpa, you know, they had all this time, and now we're under all this stress, right? Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah. And so that was his reaction, you know, that's what he was trying to express. Also remember too, that when he put that paint, I think that was just before World War I had started, you know, and there was all the tension, you know, and particularly in Europe, you know, at that time, with the Germans and Kaiser Wilhelm. I don't think he had started invading, you know, Poland or any other countries at that point in time, but there was a lot of saber rattling going on, you know, a lot of, you know, threats. And so the threat of war was out there, kind of hanging over everybody's head. And that was his reaction to it. So, you know, the way that he expressed that, you know, was through that painting. And if you look at, you know, his and other artists' paintings from that time, you know, you can almost get a sense of, you know, how palpable the tension and the anxiety in society was at that time. Remember, that's, you know, before we started into this art movement called abstract expressionism, there was that art movement that preceded it called expressionism, right? And they were still using, you know, recognizable, you know, figures such as Munch and his figure. You could see that as a human, but, you know, they weren't treating it like a traditional academic painting of somebody, you know, who, like Bouguereau, right, who was a member of the Salon. What was he doing? You know, he was trying to portray beauty, right? And all of his paintings were about, you know, mythology and, you know, things of the past, you know, things that would calm people and make them feel good, right? Because they were beautiful to look at. You know, and the expressionists, they weren't having any of that, you know. It wasn't about beauty. It was about, you know, the world that they lived in. And so their approach to that was, you know, they couldn't sit down and paint a pretty picture if they wanted to express the ideas, you know, that they, you know, or have the conversations that they, you know, wanted to have with people. And so they had to make those images look more shocking, right? And, you know, get people to react to them, and actually kind of feel some of the emotions that they were trying to portray. And, so, yeah. And today, you know, we have, you know, this swing back from abstraction, you know, back into realism, right? And you have so many different directions, you know, as an artist that you could go and be, you know, be a representational artist if that's what you want to do. Okay, not that you have to, but, you know, you could be, you know, almost like an academic painter, and that would be perfectly fine. You could also, you know, do imaginative art, right? Somebody like Frank Frazetta or Boris Vallejo, and we've looked at other artists, you know, who kind of went that direction. And, you know, there's a lot of artists out there, you know, who are using their imagination to try to portray their view of not what today, but really what the future might look like. And so, you know, as an artist, you know, one of the things you might talk about is, rather than what does the world look like today, it's like, all right, you know, what's it going to be like in 50 years? You know, what's it going to be like, you know, when my great-great-grandchildren are here? And, you know, what's the world going to look like? How's it going to feel? Is it going to be a utopia? Is it going to be a disaster? You know? I mean, or somewhere in between. And that's where using your imagination as an artist, you know, can really kick in. And you can do a lot of different things with it. So, you know, those are extremes, right? And there's lots of things in between. But I guess what I'm trying to, if I can't get anything else across to you today, it's more about, you know, don't feel married to painting something exactly the way you see it. It doesn't have to be a photograph. You know, that's not what art is. You know, what art is about you taking in the things that you're seeing, figuring out how you feel about it and what you want to say about it, and then letting it come out there on that paper as a drawing or a painting, you know, whatever.
So
And
one thing,
interpret it. Yeah.
you mentioned the word utopia, and I look in Google utopia painting. So utopia painting is when I paint something out of my own imagination.
Well,
For the figure that I imaged that I saw, that's what I give me that idea.
yeah. Okay. Utopian means like ideal, right? So, you know, if you have the view of the future, that the future is going to get better, and that people are their life is going to be easier, right? And everything is going to just, you know, sort of magically work, and everybody's going to get along. There won't be any wars. Nobody will be hungry. Nobody will be poor, right? That's utopian. Okay. You know, on the other hand, you know, what is it? Dystopian? You know, where everything is kind of dark, and nobody will have any freedom. You know, you'll be controlled, or you know, you'll be hooked to a machine, and you'll just be a slave. You know, that might be a more dystopian view, right? But you find a lot of that in fantasy art, in particular, right? And you know, when I first started, you know, painting when I was a very young guy, you know, sci-fi and fantasy art was just sort of at it wasn't really starting. You know, it had been around really since about the 1930s. You know, with people illustrating, you know, books like by H.G. Wells, you know, things like that. You had, and I mentioned them, Frank Frazetta, Boris Vallejo, as illustrators, and they're pretty well known in that category. But it's something that was gaining popularity again.
Well, isn't that the time period when Superman and all, Flash Gordon and all those were sort of emerging as well?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it was around about the 30s that the first Superman comic books and things came out. You know. And America was looking for a hero.
Right.
You know, and that's the thing. You know, it's the whole world was really looking for heroes. You know, at that point in time, because we had done away with mythology. You know, we didn't have Greek mythology anymore. And so, you know, we were trying to create new mythologies. Mm-hmm. And, you know, superheroes and Marvel comics and stuff like that, comic book art and fantasy art, you know, were kind of a source for that. So, you know, it became a very popular thing, and it never really went away, you know.
Really big right now, again.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's had a huge comeback.
Yes.
And that's, you know, and see, you know, we used to call that sci-fi and fantasy art, right? Or comic book art. And then that evolved into, you know, what they call, you know, you know, science fantasy, and now it's called imaginative realism. Okay. And it's not all about space. You know, it could be about everything. And in fact, if you, you know, there's a lot of artists out there working now, and, you know, there's so many different little niches of it. You know, there's people who do sort of, you know, demonic and kind of black, you know, dark art. There's people who do science fiction, you know, art or futuristic art. There's people who do, you know, stuff that kind of harken back to setup, you know, and Greek mythology and, you know, heroes and stuff like that. So, you know, there's all kind of stuff out there. You know, and it's worth looking at, you know. One of the big things that we can, well, I can give credit, you know, to science fiction and fantasy art is that most of those artists, most of the people who were interested in that, you know, they also had this parallel interest in learning how to academically draw and paint and use color, because those were critical to them. You know, if they were going to make something believable, you know, or make it hyper real, then they had to have those classical skills. And see, you know, in a way, you could almost credit them with keeping, you know, classical drawing and painting and figurative drawing and painting alive. You know, particularly during that period of like the 1950s and the 1960s, when most of the universities and things like that were all teaching nothing but abstract art or conceptual art, right? And so, you know, if you didn't have those people around, you know, to keep those drawing skills and things like that alive, you know, we would have lost all that. Yeah. So, you know, it's an interesting art movement. You know, it's an interesting period of history, which is not over yet because we're still right in the middle of it. But, you know, you as an artist today, you know, all I'm saying to you is it's okay to use your imagination. You don't have to portray everything, you know, just how it is. And you have a lot of liberty, and you have a lot of different art movements and styles that you can borrow from. So, you know, play with that. You know, don't be afraid of it. You know, jump in and try things. You know, who knows? You know, you could be, you know, you could be the next Salvador Dali. Yeah. So, anybody got any comments? Anything we need to talk about before we go away?
No.
No. Armando, are you watching?
It was a nice speech.
It was a nice speech.
Yes.
Good.
Veronica, you have anything to say? You are smiling.
I don't think it was a speech. I think it was an information lecture.
Oh, well, yeah.
So that we would.
I'll go on further than that, intellectual conversation.
Yes. So that we could feel free to create more art.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah. You know. Yeah, get out of your box. You know.
Some of us are happy in our little box.
Yeah, and that's the first sign that you need to tear that box up and get out of it.
Right.
Could be a little boring, you know, if you stay in that box.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's part of it. Well, maybe it's just me, but you become complacent to a degree that you feel safe, you can stay in the box, and you're complacent, and sometimes pushing it too far makes you a little nervous.
Yeah. Well, just think of it this way, okay? And this is true for a lot of artists. If you know, if if the reception that their work gets is, oh, gee, that's really nice. That's kind of a death knell for them.
Oh,
Because the fact is, what is the purpose of art in the first place? It's to express yourself, right? It's to have a conversation, and if you do a piece of art and you put your audience to sleep or you pacify them, to where there's nothing to talk about, why are you making art? Okay. And a lot of artists view it that way. Now, I'm not saying that they're totally right, because there are people out there who make art just because they enjoy the process. And, they're not trying to have a conversation with the world. All they're trying to do is, they're trying to get through their day, and they're trying to relieve a little stress and, try to convey, the way that they see the world out there. And if somebody likes it, that's fine. If somebody doesn't like it, that's okay too. They don't care. So
That's what I feel about Veronica. Her painting, your painting.
that's how
It
you,
makes you think, like, is that the land mass? Is that a water mass? Is that a sky mass? You do some of your landscapes, it makes you like, okay, my mind's got to sort this out.
okay. So in other words, her paintings intrigue you, right?
Yes, right.
There we go. See, now that's a good thing. See, they caught your interest, right? And which is a much better reaction than like, oh yeah, gee, that's really pretty, and it goes with their couch too.
Right.
right.
Yeah. I don't know. Eloise came in late on this conversation, but
Hi, Eloise.
Hello, everybody.
Uh,
yeah,
Sorry I missed out.
yeah.
I have to go back and do the Fulton County thing.
yeah, right.
Okay. You got any thoughts about that, Eloise? About using your imagination, in your art, stuff like that? Any thoughts?
Someone told me not too long ago that people who copy other people's art have no imagination and creativity, so they have to use everybody else's. So I've been thinking about that.
Okay.
But then artists do
What did,
borrow or steal from each other ideas and inspirations.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then you see, stealing is perfectly fine. Okay. But the thing is, and see, stealing and copying are two totally different things. Okay. You can see an idea or see somebody talking about something, and it's one thing to take that image and copy it and make it look just like theirs. That's copying. But if, let's say, you see that painting, and even if you agree, right, and you change it to your own version of it or your own vision of it, who the characters are or what, the situation that they're in, again, that's you reinterpreting, you're acting as a filter. You saw something, you reacted to it, and you created this. Okay. And it doesn't look anything like that, even though it may be similar, right? Maybe having the same conversation. See, that's not copying somebody. That's having a reaction. Pablo Picasso and Salvador Dali did that for almost 5 decades. Even though they didn't know each other personally, they followed each other's art. Picasso would see, something that Dali did, and then Picasso would reinterpret it, in his way. And then Dali would see the interpretation of it, and then he would go another step, and respond to it. And that's what kept that rivalry going, for almost 50 years.
Mhm.
You know, and it kept the world, you know, literally on the edge of their seat, you know, trying, you know, wondering, you know, what are they going to do next, right? But that's what it was, you know. It was this back and forth conversation, you know, and they borrowed and stole from each other freely,
Mhm.
and nobody got upset about it because, you know, they were both artists and they both understood that that's what artists do.
But even they stole idea from each other. They express the idea on a different way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because Picasso and Salvador Dali, they have a totally different style.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You know, there's one thing about copying somebody. Okay. If you do a painting and I sit down and I do a painting that looks just like yours, that's copying you. Okay. But if I see you do something and I have a reaction to it and I respond to it and I create a totally different painting, talking about the same thing, maybe giving a little more insight into how I feel about it. See, then that's not copy. That's you may be borrowing, or responding to that piece of artwork, but you're not copying it. Nothing wrong with that,
Why are there international or national copyright laws then about dealing with art and artists' work?
Okay, exactly for the reason that you have commercial entities out there, corporations, companies, who would love to be able to look at a painting going, wow, like Edvard Munch's Scream, right? They would love to be able to take that painting and put a Pepsi in his hand, right? Yeah, they would, okay? That's why there are copyright laws, okay? It protects the artist and the image from being commercially appropriated and used in a way or an intent that they didn't necessarily agree with or did not profit from.
Doesn't the copyright though have like an expiration that then it becomes almost like public domain?
Yes.
75 years, isn't it, after they die?
Yes. It's 75 years after you die that then your artwork becomes public domain. But here's the thing. That doesn't apply to everything. Because if you've actually applied for a copyright for your artwork, that's actually something that you can then pass down, and any profits or usage of that you can assign to your heirs in perpetuity. See? So, the 75-year limit was set, because there was artwork out there that nobody was going to be able to claim, as far as, well, my father did that or my grandfather did that. And so when they wrote those copyright laws, they put that, the ability to, for an artist during his lifetime to basically assign that to their heirs in perpetuity, through a trust. And so that if any profits or anything were made from the use of their work, that their families actually benefit from it. And, that's one of the big battles, as an artist. Because if you look at the art world, and, we're talking primarily fine art right now. Okay, so Eloise sells a painting, right? And she sells it to somebody in the neighborhood who she's known for years. And then that person passes away. And so they leave it to their children, okay? And their children get the painting. But, you know, they may like the painting, they may not, you know, but Eloise, you know, does a lot of other paintings. She begins to sell a lot more paintings, and the value of her paintings go up, you know, or maybe Eloise passes away, right? And all of a sudden, Eloise isn't making any more paintings. And so again, the value goes way up. And those children decide, well, you know, we like the painting, but we don't really have a place for it to go. It doesn't really match our couch, you know. And this museum would like to collect a body of Eloise's work. Okay, and all right, all of a sudden, you know, we're going to sell it for a couple $100,000. Okay. You know, does Eloise's family benefit from that in any way?
No.
See, and that's one of the disparities, you know. It's like, you know, as creators, you know, the people who created the art and their families, you know, the way it's set up now, they don't get any benefit as the work becomes more valuable. It's the person, you know, who bought it.
Yeah.
But that's the whole concept behind the crypto art, that
Right.
the art still has the control.
Exactly, right. And that's why artists are kind of beginning to work in that direction. And they're trying to push for new laws where if the sale of that art, you know, let's say it goes to an institution or whatever, a certain percentage of that has to go to their heirs, particularly if the work had been copyrighted and left in a trust, you know, to their heirs. You know, if you know, something started happening, you know, right around about the 1930s, 1940s. And it was a very smart thing, actually. You know, a lot of artists, when they died, you know, were not particularly wealthy. But once they died, all of a sudden, it's like their work became very valuable, right? And, you know, an example of that is a fellow by the name of Nikolai Fechin, right? Fechin was a Russian artist who came to the Americas, I think in about the 1920s, 1930s, painted in the Southwest. And, you know, when he died, you know, his work was kind of, you know, a little bit valuable, not very valuable. Now it's worth gold, or, you know, better than gold. But, you know, artists began to put, you know, the collections of their work in trusts, you know, and so they started working with attorneys at that time to set up, you know, sort of legal constructs where the profits and things from their work, as their value, you know, went up, that money would go back into that trust, and then that trust could support whatever it is that they wanted to, you know, put it toward, whether it was their ancestors, their families, or in Fechin's case, it was into an institution of trust that basically is now opened up an art school in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it's been running for 75 years. And most of it gets funded out of the profits of all the different images, books, and things like that that Fechin's work gets published in. Because every time a publisher, you know, uses any of his images, they have to pay for that. You know, it's not for free. See, and that money goes into that trust, and then it goes to support, you know.
I have a question about that then. And I looked it up at 7. I made a mistake. It's 70 years instead of 75. But if a painting is copyrighted and you said that copyright goes into perpetuity. So that means that,
Well, it can be. It doesn't have to be. Okay. Once you copyright something, then it becomes an asset. And then you can actually take that asset and you have to put it into a trust. See? Right? And it's not just that one painting. It's, you know, the whole collection of your work or whatever. And so what that legal trust does is that protects, you know, protects the work from being, you know, misused, and or it gives your heirs the freedom, you know, to step in and go, okay, yeah, we don't really want Pepsi using my great-great-grandfather Edvard's painting of the screen. You know, we don't really want to use it to sell Pepsi. Okay. And so, you know, they, you know, if that gets infringed upon and they win their lawsuit, then they get more money. See? But they also have control over how the art is shown, where it's shown, you know, where it's housed, how it's cared for. See? So it leaves them not only the possibility that the work that you create will benefit your heirs in the future, it also protects it from being abused or misused at the same time. So, you know, there's a lot of interesting legal wranglings, you know, that artists unfortunately are not educated about. And it's one of those things, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have spent a good deal of my time beginning to understand, you know, how the business, the capitalist view of business runs in the art business, and then how artists are counteracting that. You know,
I read an article.
that's the fight.
I read an article not long ago about a person who did a painting, and the person is now pretty popular, more popular than she was when she did the painting. And she sold one of her paintings to a person at a discount because the lady really liked the painting, and so she let her have it, even let her pay on installments for the painting. As time passed, the lady who owned that painting now has, since the artist has become a little bit more popular, has sold the painting for a few $1,000s, I think. I can't remember the details. And now there's a big stink about the artist let the lady have the painting at a low price, and she thinks she is entitled to part of the profit from that painting. So is this a problem because that painting was never copyrighted, or what? You know?
More than likely, yeah.
So that means that an unknown artist can produce a painting and it becomes valuable later, and there's nothing that artist can claim from the profits of that painting because it was not copyrighted. Yeah.
Well,
wow, that's scary.
that and the fact that she had agreed to sell the lady the painting in the first place at a much lower price than she really wanted for it, and then let her pay on time.
Mm-hmm. So she doesn't, if the painting had been copyrighted, the customer could not claim ownership of the rights to do that, even though she owned the physical painting.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. Ooh.
Yeah. Well, you see, okay, and this is the way that contracts are now being written in most cases. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will sell you this painting for $1,000 today. Okay. And I'm perfectly happy with that. But I retain copyright. And if I want to use that image to put in a book or to sell prints or anything else, that's my right as the creator. I can do that. Okay. You still own the physical painting, but I still retain all the rights for the usage of the image, which stops you, even though you're buying the painting, from being able to go out and make a deal, you know, and have prints made and you make the profit on it. See?
But I can sell you that painting,
yeah,
the physical painting, at
Right.
whatever price I want to. That
Right.
one painting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You can have the painting for $1,000, but you can't go out and make prints and then sell them for $10 a piece. Okay, until you've sold, you know, 10,000 of them because everybody wanted one, and made a lot more money than the money that I, as the artist, you know, got for it. See, I've retained copyright on it, so I'm the only one. If there's demand out there to get prints of that painting, then I'm going to be selling them.
So that idea about the minute I signed it, it's mine, has no legal claim to that painting, right? It's
Sorry,
it's a
what?
copyright. Some people say that if you, as long as you signed it and maybe you sent it in a letter to somebody, then you retain the ownership of it. That's not legal. I mean, no legal rights to that, right?
No, quite the opposite. See?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people believe that though.
Well, no. Okay, and here's the thing. It used to be that you would have to pay your, I think it was $3.50 or something like that, photograph it and send it to the Library of Congress to get it copyrighted.
Mhm.
Okay. They've changed that law. Back in the about the 1980s, 1990s, that changed to all you have to show is your intent to file copyright. Okay.
Does that Circle C do anything? Or?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But, you know, they've gone past that now. You know, that's the safe way to do it. Is somewhere on that artwork, you've got your name and the Circle C, which means that you intended or you intend at that time or sometime in the future to claim copyright. See? And as long as you've got that on there, you have a perfectly legitimate legal case that you're reserving the right to take the copyright on that as the creator. Okay. Now that's the way the law was originally written. Okay. The way that it's now being interpreted is if you as the artist somewhere on that painting have a signature, and this is where dates become important, have a date on there so that you can prove when you created it, you know, then you can still claim copyright on it. And nobody can take that away from you. Okay?
Now, would taking a picture of it, with your camera, digital camera, where they actually put a date stamp on it, does that count?
You can change those date stamps.
Yeah, well,
That's true.
all you have to do is save the file. Every time you resave that file, let's say that you take it off this hard drive and put it on that hard drive,
Right.
it
That's
doesn't
true.
have the original creation date on it. It has
That's
the
true.
date that the new file was set up. So in a way, that doesn't really work very well. Okay. But here's another way of doing it. Publish it. All you have to do is publish it. So, for example, do a painting, put it on Facebook. There's a posting on Facebook. You know, when was the posting on Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else? You know, when was it uploaded? Okay. If you can show that I created this and then I uploaded it to Instagram on this date, you can claim copyright on it. See? And if somebody copies your painting, or let's say that Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola, you know, rips it off and uses it in one of their promotions or something, and you find out about it, you can go to court and go, wait a minute, I painted that. You know, I painted that. I can prove I painted it because I painted it and I posted it on Instagram on this date. And 3 years later, you know, this clown from Pepsi-Cola, who was an account executive, saw it and thought that that would make a great, you know, summer promotion. And so he ripped it off, and Pepsi-Cola made hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, off of this promotion. I need to get paid. And show me the money. So, you know, so that's kind of how that's beginning to work, right? And in the digital age now, a lot of people are going to see your work, you know, because once you post it on the internet, it's out there, and it is not ever going to go away. It'll be out there forever, somewhere, you know. And so can people download it? Could people use it? Yeah, they could. Okay. You know, the problem is tracking down your work and seeing if people are using it, or, you know, you may never know.
Can you do it after the fact?
Can you
Like,
what?
for example, can you do it after the fact? Like, I know, for example, someone who's been in this class sold one of her paintings to a friend on an installment payment plan.
Yeah.
And it's really a great painting. Even after she's done that, can she still go back and get some type of copyright or rights to that painting?
Well, yeah, the minute she created it, you know, she had the right. All she
But
has.
she sold it without anything.
Well, does she have an image of it?
Yes,
Is the painting signed?
yes.
Is there a date when she made it on there?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if there's some kind of date on it, then she can basically claim copyright from that date on there. If not, then the thing to do is upload it to some kind of social media platform, and she can begin to claim copyright from the date that she uploads it.
But the other lady has already taken it and sold it. So who's
No.
where?
Well, wait a minute. Are we talking about John's situation?
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been sold. The lady bought it on installment and has it in her possession.
But so it's sold if she bought it on installment, right?
Yeah, right, that's the same. Yeah.
It's sold to her. Yeah, it's sold.
Not a resale.
It's sold to the original buyer. Okay.
Oh,
And so you see, it's still within that contract between the artist and the original buyer. You know, the original buyer hasn't violated a copyright or anything by going out and trying to do prints of it or anything like that. But now, in answer to your question, yeah, if the artist has some kind of way of proving when they made it, and they have an image that they can upload to, say, Facebook, Instagram, something like that, then they have some kind of provenance, some way of going back and going, okay, no, this is this is my work, and
But still, it wouldn't have been posted till after it was sold.
Well, we're not worried about the sale. Okay.
Okay.
What we're worried about is sometime in the future. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. This lady, somebody approaches this lady, the buyer, and says, I really like that painting. Can I buy it from you? Because I would like to use it to promote my fencing company or something like that, that's what we're worried about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even a later posting on, let's say, Instagram would protect that.
As long as it predates any abuse, yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Or infringement. As long as the copyright hadn't been infringed or anything like that, as long as you have some kind of catalog that you created it and you created it before that happened, you know, you're basically providing provenance to the piece, you know, of when it was created, who created it, and who actually has rights as the creator. See, you know, and see where you get into a dispute is, and this, we were talking about copying, right? So let's say this account executive from Pepsi-Cola, and I know I'm picking on Pepsi-Cola. You know, he sees a painting hanging in a gallery, and he gets out his little phone and he takes a picture of it. I really like that painting, right? Sticks it back in his pocket, goes back to the artist, you know, back to his office. And he says, you know, I really love that painting and I like to use it, you know, for my summer cup promotion. I could see that painting wrapped around a cup of Pepsi-Cola, you know, with Pepsi logos all over it.
A mug.
And yeah, a mug or something like that, right? Or a t-shirt, you know, or a big banner, right? And so, you know, he goes back and, you know, he's working with, you know, a design firm or, you know, a freelance artist or something. He says, hey, you know, I saw this great image, you know, and here, this is what it looked like. Can you do this? And, you know, unfortunately, you know, the guy not knowing where it comes from, you know, shakes his head, yeah, okay, yeah, I could do something like that. And all of a sudden, you know, you've got their painting, you know, on a big Pepsi banner or on the side of a truck going down the road one day, and they look over and go, that's my painting. And it may not be their painting exactly, but it's pretty damn close to it, right? See, that's where it gets sticky. Because then, see, he didn't use the actual artist's painting, but he basically ripped off the image and had somebody, you know, copy it, you know, of which he had a contract and he paid this person to do it, you know, and then he feels like he's the creator then and he can use it freely. See? And that's where, you see, that's where everything begins to get really convoluted.
Yeah, it's all too complicated.
well, no, it can. It can. But the thing is, yeah, see, and that's where provenance comes in to it. Because, again, you know, if she's driving down the road and she looks over and she sees a Pepsi truck with her painting plastered all over the side of it and recognizes that as her work, and then she goes and, like, you know, picks up the phone and calls Pepsi and going, you know, I did a painting, looked almost exactly like the side of your truck. You know, who was the artist who did that? You know, and, you know, where did you get that image from? You know, is it just coincidence? Did another artist come up with an image that looks almost exactly like mine? You know, could we be joined mentally? You know, telepathically? You know, could we be transmitting images back and forth? You know, through the airwaves. You know, I mean, how would that work, right? And so, you know, then you have to kind of, you know, dig through the weeds and figure it out. But if the original artist has provenance and can prove when they did it, and they can make any kind of connection, you know, with how that image got in Pepsi's hands. Like, for example, if she knew that she had it at a particular gallery and she talked to that gallery owner, and, you know, and the gallery owner happens to remember that this guy from Pepsi just happened to really be standing in front of that painting for half an hour and really kind of painted it and talking about how wonderful it was and, you know, how he really loved that painting and that he actually took a picture of it, you know, so he could show his wife or something like that later on, then they've got a law case.
Or like you going through the gallery, taking pictures and showing them to us.
Right. Yeah.
Are you showing our photos on this website, website, and I copy John's and start producing some greeting cards using his image?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Before you know it, we'll all be suing each other, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I
I think it's
think I'm gonna take my paintings along with me to the crematorium.
My belly is talking to
There'll
me.
be no issues.
Yeah, yeah. Don't do that. You know, don't do
I
it.
think
My
it's
belly
less
is talking
headaches just
to
to
me.
get a copyright on the thing.
Yeah.
Just register it through the copyright office.
Okay. So,
Excuse me. My
Yeah.
belly is talking to me.
okay, let it talk to you. I got one thing I want to show you. Okay. All right. Hang on one sec. Let me walk over here and grab something. I think I can show you. I hope.
John, is that your next masterpiece in the background?
Get your cameras ready, snap that picture and send it up.
Can you move to the side so I can get a full view?
Okay. Can everybody?
Oh, okay. That's how you do that. Yeah,
All right. You see that canvas?
yeah.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay. Provenance. Right there. Okay.
I do that in the back of all mine.
Okay. Okay.
See, that proves who did it. Okay. And now I don't usually put dates on the back of my canvases. And there's a big debate about that. About, should you or should you not date your work? Okay. Now I have fallen on the side of not dating it. I've also fallen on the side of just putting my first initial and not my full name for several reasons. Okay, in trying to sell your work either online or in galleries, revealing your gender and revealing when the work was done sometimes affects people's decision to buy the work.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. I thought about that,
Yeah.
especially being a woman.
Right.
Yep. No, that's something you gotta think about.
Yeah. Who is E. Bradley? Right.
Hmm.
You don't know. Just like people don't really know who C.S. Goggins is. Right. Could be a woman.
And J.K. Rowling's.
It could be Charles. It could be Christine. It could be anybody. Okay, so and I know it's kind of a silly, kind of fickle thing. About people in galleries and things when they see a piece of work, it's like, well, I don't really want to buy that work. That's like 10 years old. Do you have anything that you've done more recently? What's the difference?
Well, without a date, you could tell them I did it last week.
If it's hanging in a gallery, they're not gonna see the back anyway.
Well, no, but you see, the question is, do you put a date when you sign it? And, a lot of people sign their paintings on the front.
Yeah, I do.
And see, I sign my painting on the front.
Yeah.
Okay. See right here I don't know if you can see right here in the corner.
Right.
I sign it, but I don't put a date on it.
No.
And I don't put a date on the back. And the reason I don't do that is because I don't want a gallery owner having to get into a discussion of, well, yeah, okay, this is some of his older work, right? And
This is his blue period. This is his.
And if I take this painting out of one gallery and I move it to another, I don't want them looking at it and going, oh, well, you painted that 10 years ago.
But wouldn't your style? I mean, normally your style changes over 10 years. Like I say with Picasso, for example, people would know by the look of it what period it was painted.
Yeah. Well, did Andrew Wyeth change his style over 10 years? No.
No, that's true, right?
No. You look at a early Andrew Wyeth, you look at a later Andrew Wyeth, they're virtually
Right.
the same. Okay.
He
And
was in that box.
yeah, well, he had a particular thing that he arrived at early and he liked and he stayed with
Mhm.
for the rest of his life. You know, and toward the end, you might say that it became more of a box and that he looked for different ways to get out of that box. Hence the Olga paintings, right? Yeah, which were kept secret until after his death. So, you know, different artists handle that differently.
Like John said, he was happy. He might have been happy in that box.
Yeah, right.
Well, you know, I'm sure that every time that a museum or whatever, you know, bought a Wyeth and it went, you know, it went to his estate. And see, that's another thing, and we'll get into this whole, you know, legal thing later. But you know, a lot of artists set up an estate before they die. See, and there's different reasons for that. You know, one is it protects them from, you know, being hit with taxes up the wazoo, particularly when they start making money, you know, on their artwork. It's sheltered in many ways. But, you know, I mean, you know, there are many artists out there who perfect the style, you know. You know, we talked about Boris Vallejo and Frank Frazetta. You know, they painted for about 30 or almost 40 years each. You know, their artwork from the time that they were in their early 20s to the time that they were, you know, in their 70s or 80s didn't change. So, you know. So, you know, it's like not everybody you know, not everybody is a Picasso and not everybody is going to change a style like every 3 to 5 years. Okay. You know, it's your artwork isn't necessarily like a car you're going to trade in. So anyway, I think John is frozen.
I'm back.
All right. Anyway, you know, on that happy note, Armando is hungry and wants to go eat. So we better let him go.
Mhm.
Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I hope you learned something from it.
I learned a lot.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but it is something to think about, you know, because, you know, though your goal may be to just create art for yourself and the enjoyment of you and your family, you know, you never know where it's going to go. So, and, you know, I mean, I don't think that Grandma Moses, when she started painting, had the intention that, you know, her stuff was going to end up in the Met.
Right.
Probably never saw that coming. Would have never dreamed or imagined it, you know. Luckily, it worked out, you know. And she actually got to go to the Met and see her own show, you know. So that was, you know, that was a good thing. You know, but that's, you know, that's a fairy tale story that doesn't happen really often.
Yep.
Anyway, we will see you all tomorrow at 2:00.
Uh-huh.
I am going to go on and continue to explore parks the way I did yesterday. And, you know, I went to 4 different places yesterday, 2 of which were viable. Okay, the other 2 I had to rule out. But yeah, we're going to keep looking. And as soon as I get that list together and everything, I'll be sending out a list of new classes and information on the plein air class. So if you want to sign up, send me an email. Okay?
All
We
right.
have to tell you we want to sign up for the plein air
Yes.
too? Okay.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, send me an email so I have it documented that you actually wanted to be on there. Okay?
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Just saying, hey, would you put me on the list on Zoom? Yeah. They want some kind of documentation. Okay. Otherwise, I could be lying to them and saying, hey, everybody in the world wants to sign up for this class. You know, who would know, right? So anyway. All right.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, Charles.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.